if Chris Christie is Mr. Brawler, Mr. Ready to throw down. I mean, can we? You guys should hear. This is what he's out there saying. Should we let everybody?
Should we play that before Vivek?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a more. We know what Vivek is saying. I mean, Vivek is running for the Trump cabinet. I mean, he's a nice guy, and I that's fine. But Vivek is not going to be president. Chris Christie is running to prevent Trump from being president. That seems to this kind of opposite.
Yeah, let's
ends.
play Chris Christie, who was on CNN last night, right? The town hall, I think. Was it last night or the night before? And he absolutely savaged Trump.
Here's what he says. You can listen to it. Play it.
I've known him for 22 years. The only thing he understands is force. The only thing he understands is coming right at him and making your case. And if these other candidates don't want to do it, the American people and Republican primary voters have to start to understand this. When did we get to the point where we're always blaming our adversaries for the weakness of our candidates? Oh, it's the Democrats' fault. It's DOJ's fault. It's this person's fault. It's the media's fault. How about it's his? He hasn't won a damn thing since 2016. Three-time loser. 2018, we lost the House. 2020, we lost the White House. We lost the United States Senate a couple of weeks later in 2021. And in 2022, we lost 2 more governorships, another Senate seat, and barely took the House of Representatives when Joe Biden had the most incompetent first 2 years I've ever seen in my life. Loser, loser, loser. Now we're getting going, it'll be different this time. Why? Why will it be different this time? Those arguments need to be made, and I'm not afraid to make them. For 2 reasons. 1, I'm not afraid of him. And 2, it's the truth.
Why, if he's going to take, I mean, he's throwing haymakers. Let's be honest. He is calling Trump out. He is saying Trump is a loser and a liar. That's what he's saying. He's running as a Republican, and that is what his claim is there. Well, he's got to come on shows like this one and explain to Republican voters, with people who are going to ask him real questions about why he's making these allegations or how he's going to back up the claims that he's making, and not just go on MSNBC and have libs clap for him. I mean, that's, if you're not willing to speak to Republican voters, why are, you're going on CNN, you're going on Morning Joe. What are you really doing? And this is one of the things you see is that people who oppose Trump from the right, somehow a lot of them turn into liberals. I don't know what else to say. There's like this sliding scale of, someone steps up, they fight Trump, and it doesn't work. And then all of a sudden they're going on Morning Joe and they're like, trans rights are human rights. And I think that men should be able to compete against women. And it's like, well, how does this happen?
It's so well said. And we told you this is going to happen, right? All those big interest groups, the Lincoln Project and Bulwark or whatever those places are called.
Democrats. They're Democrats now.
That's right. They initially were like, oh, Trump is an existential threat to democracy. And then they owe their entire existence to Trump. And so if Trump weren't the nominee, they would pivot and say, well, actually, Ron DeSantis is the biggest threat to democracy and all those things. It's interesting as the nominee shifts. Chris Christie is interesting to me. Do you know Chris Christie personally?
I don't even know if I can't remember if I don't think I've ever interviewed him. I don't think he's ever come on any show I've done. And I mean, I've interviewed everybody other than libs who won't talk to me. But he kind of predated me having my own. Yeah. Anyway, I've never met him, and I don't think I've ever even interviewed him.
I was curious just because he's New Jersey and you grew up in New York, and like he was the patron
Oh, you mean if
saint.
I met him? Yeah. I mean, like I grew up. I knew Trump a little bit growing up. I knew Giuliani growing up. I mean, met them. When I say knew them, I met them and saw them in places.
So you don't have a personal, because I know a lot of people that I talk to who I respect in the New York, Connecticut, New Jersey area who, let's be honest, don't have a lot of Republican success stories to tell. And so they really became very enamored of Chris Christie. And so I do not know. I don't think I've ever met Chris Christie in person. In fact, I will say this. I know that when Chris Christie left politics, there were some conversations, a huge sports fan, and he thought about a little bit, I think, pivoting and just saying, hey, I'm kind of burned out on politics now. I want to go and talk about, the Yankees and the Red Sox and all this stuff. And so there were people talking to me saying you would love this guy purely from a sports perspective. The reason why I bring this up, Buck, is you just heard what he said. He basically, it seems to me, and you guys out there listening can correct me if I'm wrong, you're right, I think, correctly deducing Vivek is running, and I like Vivek. We've had him on this show. Vivek is running in some way to be a member of the Trump cabinet, potentially VP, right? He might do a great job of it, but he's not really running to be president, right? If you show up in Miami outside of the courthouse, as Vivek did, and you stage your own press conference saying that you will pardon Trump, I actually agree with him 100%, right? Because I started this argument before anybody else did, and now he's leading the charge, and I give him respect for that because he's arguing the same thing as me. It feels to me, though, like Chris Christie has made the decision. I am going to run for president, but primarily during that campaign, I am going to be the guy who says Trump is a liar, Trump is a loser. I'm going to attack Trump unlike anyone else. And the reason I'm asking this, Buck, is can you think of anyone that actually did this in 2016 as like the crux of their campaign? I don't, and I can't, I know people said negative things. Ted Cruz went off on Trump. Like in 16, Buck, it seemed like everybody thought, I'll avoid attacking Trump, and then hopefully it'll end up me versus Trump, and then I'll win in the end, right? Like that was the theory, I think, of a lot of guys and gals who ran in 2016. In 2020, obviously no opposition. Here in this race, it feels like Christie is the first person to enter the race just to attack Trump.
So here's where I think this is all heading to. If a candidate believes that Donald Trump won in 2020, why are they running? This is going to become a central part of this fight. If you're going to say, let's just say, Carrie Lake is not going to run against Donald Trump, right? We all know that. Carrie says very openly, I don't think I'm putting words in her mouth, that she thinks the election in 2020 was unfair, and that if it hadn't been unfair,
it was stolen.
It was stolen. She says it was stolen. That is, she will say it is stolen. Okay. If a candidate thinks that it was stolen, why is the candidate running? Because then obviously Donald Trump should be the only one. So this is, I think we're heading toward that being a part of the primary fight as well. And up to this point, you haven't really heard very much talking about. Chris Christie's obviously introducing that as his primary. That's his primary mode of attack against the president. And I wonder, are there any? I put this out there. Are there any? You don't even have to be a Chris Christie voter. Is there anyone listening to this who approves of Christie at this point in the race, is happy that he's in? I'm wondering.
Yeah, it's a great question.
I'll put it out there, 800-282-2882, because, I've asked, we've had people call, say Vivek is their guy. And, it's just our opinions about maybe Vivek does think that the way to win is to just be very favorable to Trump. And I think I would say that's highly, highly unlikely, but we don't know. No one can tell the future. We've had people that their favorite candidate never can pick their favorite. That's the whole point of a primary, is Vivek, or their favorite is, we had some people saying it was Mike Pence. I'm just putting it out there. I'm wondering, is anyone going to call in? And I'm not saying call in so we can argue with you on this. I'm just wondering, call in. If you're glad that Chris Christie is in the race, I would like to hear from that person. I think right now there's a chance that we might not get a single phone call about it. I don't know. That's why I put it out there. It's why we have a couple million of our friends listening in. So we'll see what they think.
At one point, you would agree, Buck, as somebody who was in the Northeast, Chris Christie was the saving, the lion, the knight in shining armor for East Coast Republicans. Like, he was the guy, right? People
woke up and realized that teachers' unions act as thuggish entities, bringing more and more money for themselves, benefits for themselves, and higher taxes for residents, with not a care about the children they're supposed to be educating. Teachers' unions. I'm not talking about teachers. The way the unions operate in places like New Jersey. And New Jersey's a particularly bad. In New Jersey, there have been documentaries done. There was actually one that was pretty good. It was called The Cartel many years ago, about the teachers' unions. I forget the guy who made it, or else I'll give him credit, but I'm calling out his documentary. He goes and he sees all these teachers' union administrators who are driving to work in Mercedes-Benz, and they're making $250,000 a year. You're like, what do you do? Like, what do you do here? And you got very high property taxes in New Jersey. Christie was really good on that. Are any of you thinking that he's a good voice in this race, or are you going to vote? Would you vote for him? I'll put it out there. because big tent, big discussion. I'm just wondering if anyone feels that way. I would not bet that the phone lines are gonna be jumping off the screen right now. That's my sense of it.